The typhoon was at its most deadly here in the South China Sea. 5 fishing boats gripped by the teeth of the storm.
In total, 171 sailors were on 5 fishing boats at sea on Sunday when they were caught in the typhoon near the Paracel Islands off the Vietnamese coast. 14 have already been saved and rescue operations are continuing.
All of them from China's Guangdong province. Helicopters, ships and soldiers urgently looking for the missing men, but hampered by fierce winds and high waves. By the time the typhoon hit Vietnam's central coast on Monday, it had been downgraded to a tropical storm, but it was still powerful enough to wreak havoc. Trees were uprooted, power lines cut, and thousands of houses damaged. Serious flooding and landslides are expected, and so schools have been closed and tens of thousands forced to flee their homes in central and coastal areas.
Typhoon Wu-Tip killed at least 3 people, injured 35 others, and damaged over 95,000 houses in Vietnam's central region.
At least 30 people have been killed in floods in Cambodia as heavy monsoon rains have drowned provinces along the Mekong River, raising fears the country is set for a repeat of the 1996 floods, which killed 170 and affected 1 million people nationwide. Capital Phnom Penh's not being spared. Around 25,000 hectares of rice paddies have been destroyed. And it's a similar story in neighbouring Vietnam, which has been hit by Typhoon Wu-Tip, Laos and Thailand.
The southeast has sweltered through a warm September. Gary Youngbury joins us now. Gary, it's been a month of record breakers.
It certainly has, and that's not just for Brisbane. In fact, there have been 5 of the 8 capital cities that have seen records broken for September, and that's the hottest September on record. Now, Sydney, the hottest in 150 years, but also Adelaide, Melbourne and Canberra. With Brisbane, the warmest September, that record broken since 1980. We averaged 27.2 degrees. That's 1.6 above, so that is quite high. This is coming off the back of the warmest winter on record for the country.
What started off as a funnel cloud briefly turned into a tornado as it touched ground in the town of Clonfert. Local people reported seeing a dark cloud swirling around at tea time yesterday. It caused damage in many places. 800 homes and businesses were left without power, while electricity workers repaired the damage. Funnel clouds and waterspouts aren't an unusual sight across the island. Tornadoes are much rarer.
And now a rare October snowstorm pummels the central Rocky Mountains and the U.S. Midwest.
Winter in October. Just look at the images from the planes coming in tonight. A blizzard burying 5 states under several feet of snow. Rapid City, South Dakota digging out tonight.
Official snow totals impressive. Buffalo, Wyoming 30 inches, 48 inches in Deadwood, South Dakota. Rapid City hit with 23 inches, their second highest snowfall on record.
The old record was 1.4 inches for the day. Trees still full of leaves pulled down power lines throughout Wyoming and the Dakotas, leaving 50,000 residents without electricity and heat. In South Dakota, more than 80 people were stranded in their cars as heavy snow and 70-mile-per-hour winds made highways impassable. 400 miles of highway shut down across the region.
And it's being blamed for at least 3 deaths.
On this early fall weekend, a lot of Americans are seeing the worst nature has to offer, from a blast of crippling snow in South Dakota to a tornado outbreak in Nebraska and Iowa.
And then the tornadoes tonight sweeping across several states. 20 reported since just Friday, the worst in Wayne, Nebraska.
Some a mile wide ripped through rural towns. In Wayne, Nebraska, an EF4 tornado with winds up to 200 miles an hour wiped out a dozen homes and businesses. 15 people were injured.
The handiwork of an early, unusual, fierce storm making its way out of the Rockies.
Massive wedge tornado.
Severe weather hit this weekend in a large part of the country, including heavy rains that led to a flooding emergency in Kentucky, where dozens of people had to be rescued.
The flash flooding forced at least 45 roads closed.
I know I could have got out of there. We're trapped.
The front brought record rainfall to the region, more than 7 inches in 36 hours. twice the old record set 103 years ago.
The heavy rain is thought to be part of a recent storm system that has struck the Midwest, bringing heavy rains, snowfall, and several massive tornadoes that have killed a reported 15 people.
Waves over 20 meters high have been battering the coast of East China's Zhejiang province as Typhoon Faitao approaches. Faitao is the 23rd typhoon to hit this year.
Fishing boats have been called back to shore and hundreds of thousands of people have been fleeing their homes while they still can. Faitao is bringing strong winds and heavy rain. A number of tourist resorts have already been closed with the storm fast approaching.
The town of Shuitu in southeast China, where the main avenues have turned into rivers. Walking down the street, a perilous exercise. Typhoon Faitao struck with full force, killing at least 5 people and leaving severe flooding and devastation in its wake. More than 500,000 people have been evacuated from their homes.
4 people are still missing. Flight and train services in Zhejiang province, south of Shanghai, were suspended on Monday. In Wenzhou City, the storm destroyed around 2,000 houses and 47,000 hectares of cropland, as well as killing many farm animals.
Although the summer season is over, dolphins are continuing to wash up dead along the Jersey Shore. More than 100 have been found in the state since July. The Marine Mammal Stranding Center brings the dead dolphins to researchers at the Department of Agriculture's State Lab in Mercer County. They're there working to discover more about why the animals are dying off. But the government shutdown has brought part of the investigation to a standstill. Federal authorities have had to stop analyzing and disseminating data sent from state labs all along the Atlantic coast. Federal wildlife authorities have determined morbillivirus, a form of measles, is likely causing the deaths.
Typhoon Nari raged across Luzon Island in the northern Philippines on Saturday, but spared the capital, Manila. The storm reportedly claimed the lives of at least 13 people.
Typhoon Nari slammed into the country's east coast around midnight, knocking down trees and structures. Now over 2 million people are living without electricity.
Well, this one certainly packed a punch. You know, the damage doesn't lie. Huge trees blown over as if they were like matchsticks. And again, speaking to the local people, typhoons do pass over the Philippines very often. But the locals we spoke to today were saying this was a very scary event, the worst typhoon they've seen. So that kind of goes to show the severity of the effects of the storm in the areas which it hit.
Smashing into the coast, wind gusts up to 140 miles per hour. It's being called Asia's Hurricane Katrina, the biggest storm to hit India in years. The massive cyclone, enough to cover all of France.
Is clearly visible from space. But on the ground, the storm is whipping wind gusts of up to 150 miles per hour, swamping low-lying villages and driving a towering storm surge well inland in the Bay of Bengal.
Children among the 12 million facing this monster cyclone as it made landfall just hours ago. Violent seas and winds gusting up to 150 miles per hour are battering the eastern coast of India, expected to bring with it a devastating storm surge of up to 20 feet. 800,000 residents were evacuating the area as the cyclone swept across the Bay of Bengal, people fleeing this force of nature.
Tropical cyclone Phelan damaged more than 10,000 houses and 124,000 acres of farmland in the eastern Indian state of Odisha on Saturday, killing at least 23 people.
Giant burial pits have been dug in the Black Hills of South Dakota for cattle lost in a surprise snowstorm 10 days ago. As many as 100,000 head are feared dead, and financial losses may be as high as $125 million.
That left ranchers dealing with catastrophic losses to cattle herds. The storm started with 12 hours of rain. Many of the animals could then not survive the 48 hours of snow, winds up to 60 miles an hour across the plain. Many ranchers have lost half of their herds. Huge part of the economy, especially in the western part of that state. The loss aggravated by the fact that a government program to help them recover from loss has expired without a new farm bill to renew it.
A powerful earthquake that struck the central Philippines left residents stranded and many businesses closed on Wednesday,
as buildings including churches and markets collapsed. The main tremors hit the islands of Bohol and Cebu, which are popular with tourists. The quake was registered as 7.2 magnitude.
The 7.2 magnitude quake knocked down buildings, cracked roads, and caused fires.
More than 100 people have been killed. Rescuers are still searching for victims. Damage to road, bridges, and electricity network has made reaching isolated communities much more difficult. Many people spent the night sleeping outside without any shelter as hundreds of aftershocks continue to shake the ground.
The quake caused landslides and widespread damage to infrastructure in Bohol and nearby Cebu, with close to 3 million people affected. The number of people injured in the quake climbed towards 280. The National Volcanology Agency reported more than 300 aftershocks since the initial quake.
Dozens are missing this morning after deadly typhoon slammed eastern Japan. The hardest hit area in the island 75 miles south of Tokyo. More than 30 inches of rain,
triggering huge landslides and leaving behind dozens of flattened homes in its wake.
Killing at least 17 people. Another 50 people are still missing after the storm.
City workers battled rising water levels. The impact of one of the most powerful storms of its kind to hit this country in years. Called 80 centimeters of rain fell here in 24 hours, provoking deadly mudslides. As torrents of rain drenched the crippled Fukushima nuclear plant, the operators pumped out tons of rainwater to try to avoid further flooding. While back in Tokyo, the authorities tried to reassure the public that everything was being done to respond to the effects of the storm.
Nearly 100 wildfires are burning across Australia's most populous state today. The raging fires have already killed one man and destroyed several homes in New South Wales. Hundreds of people have been forced to evacuate.
Some streets on Sydney's western front, where the risk had subsided, were almost entirely razed. Hundreds of residents spent Thursday night in dozens of evacuation centres across the state.
The flames have destroyed at least 100 homes near Sydney and scorched 50,000 hectares. Evacuees describe having to get out with little notice.
The fires near Australia's biggest city have been fueled by unseasonably high temperatures and strong winds.
The smoke blankets the ground, an indication of quite how fierce these fires burn. Sydney too, suffocated by smoke. The fires have been called the worst in years, and officials warned that it could take a few days to bring them under control.
Many continue to burn out of control. The forecast is for cooler weather and lighter winds, but not the rain the firefighters, many of them volunteers, so desperately want. Only a month into spring, most expect many more bushfire emergencies to come. This just a frightening foretaste.